Before we dive in, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more epic HFY stories. Your support helps these tales reach more sci-fi fans across the galaxy. Now settle in, because this one begins with a human who seemed insignificant, until the universe learned otherwise. Corporal Jace Rowan had long grown used to being the smallest figure in any room aboard Helion Spire. The station was built by and for species who believed size determined authority, strength, and relevance. Jace, lean and compact, barely reached the chest plate of the towering Dravik soldiers who patrolled the main concourse like metallic statues brought to life. He knew the stares they gave him. Mild amusement. Mild annoyance. Mild disbelief that a human was assigned to the same strategic outpost as them. Jace carried himself with an easy confidence that many mistook for obliviousness. His boots clicked lightly against the alloy tiles, almost swallowed by the heavy thuds of alien footsteps. Where others marched, Jace flowed, slipping around crowds, sidestepping armored shoulders, moving with a quiet awareness that suggested he saw more than he ever commented on. His brown eyes scanned, measured, calculated. Nothing escaped his notice, though he rarely gave the impression of paying attention at all. Aliens, particularly the Dravik, pretended not to see him. They failed miserably every time. A cluster of Dravik trainees blocked his path, enormous in both size and ego. Their scales shimmered under the neon lighting, weapons slung casually across broad backs. The tallest of them rumbled a laugh when Jace approached, crossing his arms like a living wall. "Human," he growled, "are you lost? The maintenance corridor is several levels down." Jace didn't break stride until he reached them. He stopped only because barreling through would be rude, not impossible. The Dravik smelled faintly of iron and scorched dust, a scent Jace had grown familiar with during joint drills. "Good afternoon to you too," Jace replied, lifting his gaze. "No, I'm exactly where I need to be." Another snicker rippled through the group. Dravik laughter was a series of rattling vibrations that made the air tremble. One flicked a talon toward Jace's shoulder. "Your commanders must enjoy cosmic comedy, assigning a creature of your scale to this station." "I like to think I have other qualities," Jace said, shifting slightly out of reach. "And scale isn't everything." "Spoken like someone who has none," the leader retorted. Jace smiled. Not mockingly. Not submissively. A calm, knowing smile that unsettled the Dravik more than a shout ever would. "Trust me," he said. "You'd be surprised." The voice that interrupted belonged to Tvor Kar, the only Dravik who didn't seem eager to mock Jace at every opportunity. Taller than the others, though less broad, Tvor carried himself with the quiet discipline of someone who spent more time thinking than bragging. His crimson eyes narrowed. "That's enough posturing," Tvor said to his peers. "Clear the walkway. Some of us have actual work to do." The trainees stepped aside, though not without muttering. Jace inclined his head to Tvor as he passed. "Appreciate that," he said. "I wasn't doing it for you," Tvor replied, though his tone was softer than his words. "Their arrogance reflects poorly on the squad." "Still," Jace added, "I'll take the assist." Tvor watched him walk away, brow furrowing as if puzzling over a riddle he'd never quite solved. The human's composure, his lack of fear, his strange little smiles, none of it fit the stereotype of frail, excitable earthlings that Dravik were taught to expect. Jace made his way to the observation deck, the quietest part of the station this time of day. Stars drifted beyond the transparent dome, scattered like silver dust across the cold expanse. He liked it here. It was the one place no one bothered him. Except today. Tvor arrived a few moments later, footsteps unmistakable. Jace didn't turn. "You followed me," Jace said casually. "I walked in the same direction," Tvor answered, though the hesitation betrayed him. "Coincidence." Jace glanced over his shoulder. "Coincidence, huh? You're terrible at lying." Dravik didn't blush, but the slight tightening of Tvor's jaw was the equivalent. "I want to understand something," Tvor admitted. "You never react. Not to insults. Not to mockery. Not even to direct provocation. Why?" Jace rested his hands on the railing, eyes drifting across the cosmos. "Because none of it matters. Words don't hurt me. And they won't matter when things get serious." "And when will that be?" "Sooner than anyone expects," Jace said. His voice dropped, a subtle warning woven through calmness. "But they'll figure it out." Tvor felt a prickle of unease. There was something off about the human certainty, something that suggested Jace knew more than he ever shared. Something that suggested Jace wasn't nearly as vulnerable as he appeared. "Rumor says you keep a pet," Tvor said, turning the conversation lighter. "Some small earth creature." Jace snorted. "Small isn't a word I'd use." Tvor scoffed. What is it then? A rodent? A winged mammal? Your species loves domestication. You could say she's domesticated, Jace replied. But not by your standards. Tvor frowned. Why does no one see it? Because that's the point. A chime echoed through the station. A security alert flashed red across the ceiling panels. Voices burst across comm channels. Orders, panic, confusion. Unidentified biological signature detected. Massive. Approaching station perimeter. Defensive units mobilize. Estimated arrival, 90 seconds. Dravik warriors thundered down hallways. Sirens blared. Lights dimmed to emergency crimson. Tvor snapped to attention. What's breaching the perimeter? Jace exhaled slowly. Not with fear. With inevitability. She found me, he said. Tvor froze. She. Jace pushed away from the railing and faced the alarms with steady eyes. Guess the rumors were half right. Time to meet my pet. The station trembled as something colossal struck the exterior hull. Tvor's breath caught in his throat. Every instinct screamed danger. Jace didn't flinch. And as the metal groaned under the weight of something impossibly large, Tvor understood the most unsettling truth of all. The human had been waiting for this. Tvor had never witnessed a station full of trained warriors panic so quickly. The alarm lights washed the corridors in a pulsing red glow, making every Dravik look like a living furnace as they scrambled toward their defensive assignments. Their talons clacked against the metal floors, echoing frantically through the halls. Yet Jace moved through the chaos with unnerving calm, as if the blaring sirens were background music and not a harbinger of catastrophe. Human, what is approaching this station? Tvor demanded, matching Jace's stride. His chest armor vibrated with each tremor from the outer hull. Something big, Jace said, checking the charge on his sidearm. But not here to hurt anyone, unless they shoot first. Which they will because they're idiots. Tvor grabbed Jace's arm. If you know what the threat is, you must tell command. I'm trying, Jace replied, prying himself free. But they're not going to believe me until they see her. The word gnawed at Tvor's thoughts as he followed Jace toward the hangar bay. The station crew had already sealed the internal blast doors, locking down every access point in anticipation of a predator forcing its way through. The air felt heavy with fear and expectation, thick enough to taste. Jace paused at a side terminal, pulling up a visual feed from the outer hull cameras. Tvor leaned in just in time to see a shape moving against the cold void. A shadow and nothing more, yet impossibly massive. Four-limbed, sinuous, with a ripple of darker space following in its wake like a living eclipse. Tvor's spine stiffened. That is no Earth animal, he muttered. That is not any creature I know. She's not from Earth, Jace said. I met her during a crash on Vesk 9. Tvor turned incredulous. You encountered that alone? Not on purpose. Jace scratched his jaw as the creature drifted closer, illuminated briefly by the station's guidance lights. I was half-conscious, bleeding, and stuck in a ship that looked like a crushed tin can. She showed up. Thought I was food. Then she realized I was helping her more than she could help herself. You helped that. Tvor pointed at the screen where the creature's silhouette eclipsed an entire docking wing. She was hurt, Jace said simply. Broken wing. Punctured thorax. And scared. He shrugged. Everyone deserves a chance. Tvor stared at the human as though seeing him for the first time. Humans were known for sentimentality, for forging emotional attachments to small, harmless companions. But nothing about this situation matched the stories. This wasn't a pet. This wasn't a companion animal. This was a living nightmare sliding across the hull of Helion's spire. What does she want? Tvor asked, though deep inside he sensed the answer. Me, Jace said. She tracks me by scent. Bonded, I guess you could call it. She finds me when she wants to check in. Check in, Tvor repeated flatly. Like a social visit? Something like that. Outside, a deafening reverberation shook the hangar. Metal groaned. Bolts sheared. The creature was attempting to enter, pushing against the reinforced exoshell with deliberate pressure. Its movements weren't frantic or aggressive, just determined. Jace placed his palms against the sealed blast door as though sensing the vibrations. She's being careful. She won't break anything unless she thinks I'm trapped. Tvor's instincts screamed that he should be running in the opposite direction. Instead, he found himself asking, why didn't you tell anyone? Because the last time someone found out, Jace said quietly, they tried to kill her. She didn't take that well. The understatement sent a cold ripple through Tvor's chest. A distant voice thundered over the station intercom. All units, prepare to fire. Target is attempting to breach Hangar 3. That's bad, Jace said. They will defend the station, Tvor insisted. They'll die trying, Jace countered. He slapped the emergency override on the panel beside the door. The system flashed red, restricted. He pulled a card from his vest, slid it into the reader, and the lights turned green. Tvor blinked. Where did you get that clearance? Did a favor for engineering. Don't worry about it. The blast door hissed open just enough for Jace to slip through before Tvor could stop him. Reflex overrode logic, and Tvor squeezed in after him, just as the door sealed again. Heavy atmospheric fog filled the hangar, condensation, coolant, and the lingering dust shaken loose by the creature's arrival. The space felt cavernous, quiet, suspended between breaths. Then the ceiling buckled. A talon, longer than Tvor's entire arm, punctured the plating before retracting. A massive head followed, prying open the breach with fluid, terrifying grace. 4 eyes glowed a molten amber, scanning the hangar with predatory precision. A low, resonant hum rolled through the chamber, vibrating the air. Tvor's muscles locked. His pulse hammered. This was no animal. This was a living weapon. Jace stepped forward. The creature froze mid-motion. Its eyes snapped toward him, and the hum softened into a trilling that vibrated like an enormous purr. The head lowered, plates along its spine flattening in what looked disturbingly like an affectionate gesture. Hey Nix, Jace murmured. Missed you too. The beast, Nix, nudged him with a snout the size of a cargo container. Jace kept a hand on her scales, the gesture confident and familiar. Tvor's breath shuddered. Seeing the human dwarfed beside the creature should have evoked pity. Instead, it struck him like a revelation. Jace wasn't fearless because he lacked fear. He was fearless because he knew exactly who stood behind him. Or what? The intercom crackled again. Weapons charged. Fire on my mark. Jace swore under his breath. I told them not to attack her. You must stop them, Tvor urged. They will provoke her into retaliation. She won't attack, Jace said. Not unless they hurt someone. But she'll defend herself. He looked up at Nix, whose eyes narrowed as energy signatures built outside the hangar. And defending herself means this station will cease to exist. Jace sprinted toward the nearest override terminal, Nix slithering alongside him like an armored shadow. Tvor followed, every instinct rebelling and yet unable to retreat. Jace slammed his palm against the comm unit. Command, stand down. Do not fire. Static. Then a clipped reply, human, move aside. This is beyond you. Yeah, Jace muttered. That's what they always think. The hangar floor trembled as Nix uncurled her wings, spreading them wide. Not in threat, rather in alertness. She sensed danger approaching and her instincts honed on survival surged. Tvor realized the truth with chilling clarity. The central conflict was no longer between species or egos. It was a race against Command's ignorance. Jace looked to the ceiling as if he could see through the metal. His voice dropped, almost a whisper. I have about 10 seconds to convince them she's not the enemy. Tvor met his gaze. And if you fail? Jace glanced at Nix, who watched the hangar doors with growing tension. Then everyone in this station learns what a real enemy looks like. Jace didn't wait for permission. He slammed his fist against the override panel until the comm channel cracked open with a burst of static and an irritable officer's voice. The hangar lights flickered as Nix shifted her enormous weight behind him, her talons clicking softly against the alloy floor. Even calm, the sound radiated danger. This is Corporal Rowan, Jace said, breath tight with urgency. Stand down your weapons. Now. You are out of line, Corporal, the voice snapped. The creature is hostile. Firing in 5. She's not hostile, Jace shouted. She's communicating. You fire, and you don't just make her angry. Nix let out a low, resonant growl that tremored through the metal beneath their feet, as if echoing Jace's warning. You trigger a counterattack, she won't survive and neither will the station. Cancel the strike. The transmission fell silent. Tvor watched Jace with a blend of disbelief and dawning understanding. The human spoke with no hesitation, no fear, only certainty born from experience. This wasn't bravado. It was trust, earned and reciprocated. The comm crackled again. Explain why the creature is not acting aggressively. Jace exhaled. Because she's here for me. Another silence sprawled across the channel, heavy with confusion. For you, the officer repeated. Before Jace could respond, the bulkhead shuddered with a thunderous impact that rattled Tvor's armor. Nix had lowered herself fully into the hangar through the deformed ceiling, settling with a grace that belied her size. 4 amber eyes scanned the room, but her gaze always returned to Jace as if tethered by instinct. The sight would have been terrifying if not for the unmistakable gentleness in her posture. "Command," Jace said firmly, "I'm going to demonstrate. Watch closely." He stepped forward, edging into the open space. Nyx's head lowered until her snout hovered inches from him. Her breath, warm and faintly metallic, ruffled his hair. Tvor's clawed hand twitched toward his weapon before he forced it still. Jace placed his hand against Nyx's jaw. The trilling sound she made was soft, melodic, almost affectionate. A creature born for slaughter was behaving like a loyal companion greeting its bonded partner. "Do you see?" Jace asked the unseen officers. "If she meant to kill me, she would have done it months ago." "Months?" Tvor echoed, taken aback. Jace nodded faintly. "I found her when she was bleeding out. Nursed her. Protected her. And she returned the favor. Over and over." Nyx shifted, unfolding a wing with a slow, fluid motion. The membrane shimmered with iridescent patterns, signs of healing Jace had once tended to with his own hands. She angled it slightly toward him, a gesture Tvor slowly recognized as protective positioning. "You bonded with a Virax Prime," Tvor whispered. "That shouldn't be possible." "Shouldn't," Jace agreed. "But humans, we break things. Limits included." His attempt at humor didn't reach his eyes. He was focused on the comm panel, hoping Command was listening, truly listening. Another voice joined the channel, deeper and more authoritative. "Corporal Rowan, if the creature is bonded, can you control it?" "I can guide her," Jace said carefully. "Control is the wrong word. That is not reassuring." "I wasn't trying to reassure you. I'm trying to keep everyone alive." Tvor stepped forward, adding his voice. "Command, I am present. The human speaks truth. The creature is not behaving aggressively. Its actions reflect recognition and calm attachment." There was a pause, then the sound of someone exhaling sharply. "Very well. Holding fire for now. But any sudden movement and we resume the strike." Jace nodded, relief flickering across his expression. "That's all I ask." Nyx's eyes narrowed as the tension eased, her muscles flattening rather than coiling for violence. The hangar seemed to exhale with her. But the momentary peace was short-lived. A distant alarm sounded, different from the earlier warnings. This one was sharper, built for emergencies of a different magnitude. Tvor stiffened as the station's AI voice echoed overhead. "New hostile signatures detected. Multiple vessels approaching. Identification, Void Reaver Raiders." Tvor inhaled sharply. "Reavers? Here?" Jace's posture hardened, shoulders straightening. "They found her." The comm erupted with voices demanding answers. Jace cut across them all. "Listen carefully," he said. "Reavers hunt Virax. Capture them. Torture them. Break them for sport or profit. Nyx escaped them once. She won't let herself be taken again." "Are they tracking her?" Tvor asked. "Yes," Jace replied. "And they're not here for negotiation." Nyx's wings tightened as a deep, threatening hum rumbled through her chest. She knew the danger approaching as intimately as Jace did. The hangar's outer shields flickered on the overhead display. Several hostile ships pierced into sensor range, fast-moving, heavily armed, and flying a pattern that indicated they had no interest in survival outside their objective. The Reavers wanted Nyx, dead or alive. Mostly dead. Tvor turned to Jace. "What now?" Jace rested a hand on Nyx's snout, the quiet moment startling in its tenderness amid rising chaos. "Now," he said, "we prepare for a fight. Because they won't stop until they reach her." He looked up as the station's shields lit with the first impact from incoming fire, casting jagged shadows across Nyx's scales. "And they have no idea what they're walking into." A second explosion rocked the station, louder, closer, sending dust raining from the rafters. Nyx's eyes blazed with a predatory glow as she rose to her full height. Jace stepped beside her, dwarfed but unafraid. Tvor felt a chill run down his spine as he looked at them, human and apex predators standing as a united front. It was the most unsettling, extraordinary alliance he had ever seen. And as the next barrage struck the shields, Tvor understood that the central conflict had shifted yet again. This was no longer about misunderstanding or fear. It was a war of survival. But for the first time, Jace wasn't the smallest force on the field. He was the most dangerous one. The first blast sheared across the station's starboard side, jarring the deck beneath Jace's boots as if the entire structure had been struck with a colossal hammer. Emergency lights bled scarlet across the hangar, painting Nyx's scales in shifting crimson hues. She snarled in the direction of the impact, her wings unfurling with a sound like tearing fabric and resonant thunder. Tvor staggered, clutching the railing as the station groaned under the second barrage. They're targeting the hangar. They want to breach directly. It's faster for them, Jace said. Reavers always choose the bloodiest route. He swung himself toward the control console, fingers racing across the interface as he accessed the manual defense grid. Red warning indicators cascaded down the screen. Turrets offline, energy reserves critical, structural integrity failing in multiple sectors. The station hadn't been built for a fight like this. Nyx emitted a sharp, vibrating chuff. A warning. A readiness. She can sense them, Jace said. They're close. Too close, Tvor replied, barely steadying himself as the deck lurched again. If they breach, they'll flood in with shock troops. That's why we don't let them. Jace slapped a palm against the console, overriding the hangar's outer doors. The massive slabs of armored alloy began sealing inward, locking down the vulnerable bay. If the Reavers got through the shields, at least they wouldn't have a clear line of sight. The lights flickered. A hollow boom reverberated through the ceiling. They're drilling, Tvor realized. Straight through the hull. Jace stepped back toward Nyx, placing a steadying hand along the ridge of her neck. Her muscles coiled beneath her scales, taut with anticipation. Then we fight on our terms. She lowered herself slightly, inviting him closer, and Tvor watched with a bewildered sense of awe. Their movements were synchronized without words, an alliance shaped not by dominance but by shared survival. The hangar shook as a section of the aft wall buckled, metal screaming as a circular cut widened with violent precision. White sparks fountained outward, and the smell of scorched alloy rushed into the air. They're coming through. Tvor barked. Jace's jaw clenched. Good. The circular breach fell inward with a molten crash. Through the smoking aperture stepped the first of the Void Reavers, towering figures in dark, serrated armor designed to intimidate as much as protect. Their helmets bore narrow visors, glowing a sickly red, and their weapons hummed with predatory voltage. One pointed directly at Nyx. Target acquired. Engage. Nyx roared, a sound so deep and resonant that it vibrated through Jace's ribs. The Reavers faltered for half a heartbeat, just long enough for her to launch forward. She struck like a meteor. Her claws ripped into the first Reaver's chest plate, metal buckling under the tremendous force. She hurled the armored raider aside with bone-cracking ferocity, his body skidding across the hangar floor. More poured through the breach, 6, 10 a dozen. Tvor fired into them, each shot flashing through the smoke. Jace ducked under a sweeping blade, catching the Reaver's arm and using its momentum to drive it into Nyx's waiting maw. She snapped down with brutal efficiency. The air filled with the clangor of metal, the snarls of the apex predator, and the electric hiss of Reaver weaponry. A blade carved past Jace's shoulder, grazing the fabric of his sleeve. He pivoted, struck low, and used the Reaver's own weight to knock him off balance. His movements were fluid, practiced, trained in the kind of close combat where hesitation meant death. You fight like a creature half your size, a Reaver taunted through distorted speakers as he lunged again. Jace ducked under the strike. Funny, that's what I use to hunt creatures twice yours. Nyx's tail whipped across the floor, catching 3 Reavers at once with a thunderous crack. Bodies slammed into the far wall. But despite her ferocity, the Reavers kept coming. Their tactics shifted, coordinated now. Several targeted Nyx while others drove toward Jace, recognizing him as the fulcrum of her discipline. Tvor shouted, "They're trying to separate you." "They won't," Jace said, but a knot tightened inside his chest. A Reaver leaped onto Nyx's back, plunging an electrified blade between her scales. She shrieked in pain, twisting violently as the energy rippled along her spine. Jace sprinted toward her before the Reaver could strike again. Nyx thrashed, slamming herself against the wall to crush her attacker, but the blade wedged deeper. "Hold still." Jace yelled as he climbed up her wing joint, ignoring the heat radiating from the wound. Nyx forced herself into a stationary crouch, her breaths ragged. Jace grasped the blade's hilt and pulled. Electricity shot through his arm, numbing it instantly, but he didn't let go. His muscles screamed, his vision blurred, yet with a final wrench he tore the blade free and hurled it across the hangar. Nyx reared with a triumphant, wounded roar, then lunged back into the fray. Tvor joined Jace at her side. "You should not have survived that." "Not dead yet," Jace muttered, shaking sensation back into his hand. The Reavers regrouped near the breach, their leader stepping forward. Taller than the others, clad in reinforced exo-armor, he carried a weapon designed specifically for subduing apex beasts, an energy harpoon launcher. Nyx's growl deepened. Even she recognized the danger. The leader aimed directly at her heart. Tvor cursed. That will kill her. Jace didn't think. He moved. Sprinting across the floor, he closed the distance before the leader fired. The Reaver swung the launcher toward him, but Jace dropped low, sliding across the deck. He slammed a boot into the Raider's knee joint, forcing him backward. The shot fired wildly, scorching a hole into the ceiling. Nyx seized the opening. Her jaws closed around the leader's torso, crushing armor like brittle bone. With a violent shake, she ended him, tossing the remnants aside. The remaining Reavers hesitated, fear finally cracking their aggression. Jace stepped forward, breath heaving, clothes torn and smeared with battle grime. "Leave," he said, voice low and deadly. "Or stay and join him." For the first time, the Reavers looked between the human and the apex predator as if reassessing which was more dangerous. They retreated. One by one they slipped back through the breach, dragging their wounded, abandoning their dead. The station trembled as their ships disengaged, engines roaring as they fled into open space. Silence settled across the hangar, thick and heavy. Nyx lowered her massive head toward Jace. He pressed his forehead gently against her scales, whispering reassurance. She rumbled in return, exhaustion and relief blending into the sound. Tvor approached slowly. "You saved the station." Jace shook his head. "I saved her. Everything else was just necessary." Outside, the distant glimmer of the Reaver vessels faded into the starfield, but Jace knew it wasn't over. They would be back. And next time they wouldn't underestimate a human or the monster who chose him. The hangar was silent, save for the low rumble of Nyx's breathing and the distant hum of the station's emergency systems. Smoke drifted along the floors in thin curling ribbons, carrying the scent of scorched metal and burnt ozone. Jace knelt beside her, pressing his hand against the warm, resilient scales along her neck. She shifted slightly, resting her massive head on his shoulder, eyes amber and soft with exhaustion yet alert, scanning every shadow. Tvor approached cautiously, still in partial armor, his crimson eyes betraying a mixture of awe and unease. "I have never seen anything like this," he admitted. "A human, commanding an apex predator. You are a force beyond reckoning." Jace smiled faintly, brushing a hand along Nyx's spine. "Force isn't the word. Trust is. Bonding. Understanding. That's what makes her and me unstoppable." Tvor studied the human, realizing how every choice, every risk Jace had taken, had been deliberate, calculated, yet tempered by empathy. "Your kind, you are small, fragile by appearance. But your courage, it is incomprehensible to us. You bend danger to your will." Jace's gaze drifted to the far end of the hangar, where the damage from the Reaver assault was still evident. Crumpled hull plates, shattered turrets, scorched walls. Size doesn't protect you. Strategy, loyalty, and the right companions do. His eyes met Tvor's. "And you if you're willing." Tvor nodded, swallowing pride. "I follow you, human. And I've never been surer of anything in my life." The station intercom flickered to life with a voice Jace hadn't expected. "Corporal Rowan, your actions have prevented catastrophe. Command is assembling a High Council delegation to commend your efforts." Jace straightened, wiping his hands on his sleeve, though a fine layer of ash clung stubbornly to his clothing. "Commendation isn't necessary. Survival is. That's what matters." "Perhaps," Tvor said, "but recognition serves to remind the galaxy what it underestimates. What it fears in silence." Moments later, the station's main doors hissed open, and figures in formal uniforms stepped cautiously into the hangar. Their eyes widened as they took in the colossal predator coiled behind a diminutive human, the bond between them almost palpable in the charged air. Advisors murmured to one another, some backing instinctively away from Nyx, though she only lowered her head, her gaze softening at Jace's gentle touch. "Commanders, observe closely," Jace said. "This is not a threat to you. This is what loyalty looks like." A counselor stepped forward, trembling slightly. We believed humans weak. That your species could never contend with the apex forces of this galaxy. We were wrong." Nyx's purr-like vibration resonated through the floor plates, and Tvor could feel it in his chest. It was a sound of connection, of understanding, of ferocity tempered by devotion. It was terrifying and awe-inspiring all at once. Jace nodded. "Humans survive. Not because we are the strongest, but because we understand trust, risk, and loyalty in ways few others can comprehend. Size doesn't dictate power, character does." One of the counselors tried a question, voice barely steady. "Will this creature be a weapon?" Jace shook his head. She's not a weapon. She's a partner. A companion. Someone, or something, you don't want to provoke, but who protects without question. For watched the interaction and finally understood what Jace meant. To underestimate a human was a fatal error, but to witness one bonded with an apex predator, that could shift the balance of the galaxy. The counselors, still shaken, began to confer quietly, while Jace remained at Nyx's side. A sense of calm settled over the hangar, but it was the quiet before the next wave of storms. Jace had already felt it. The Reavers would return. They were relentless, hunting perfection, the apex predator, and the human who dared to be her anchor. Jace's gaze drifted to Tvor. We prepare. We learn. We adapt. And next time, they will remember who they face. Tvor met him, the weight of experience settling in. I would follow you anywhere, human. And I would face any danger alongside your companion. Nyx rumbled softly, brushing her massive head against Jace's shoulder. She had endured injuries, chaos, and the threat of annihilation, yet she trusted him without hesitation. The loyalty, the bond was absolute. Come on, girl, Jace murmured, standing slowly. The galaxy isn't going to wait for us to rest. And neither should we. They moved toward the central command corridor, Tvor at their flank, a silent sentinel to witness and support. The station, battered but intact, stood as a testament to the alliance between species, between human and predator, and between courage and fearlessness. A report came in over the station monitors. Reaver vessels detected at the edge of the sector, regrouping. Jace's eyes narrowed, but a faint, almost imperceptible smile curved his lips. Good. Let them come. They'll learn, like everyone else, that humans aren't what they seem. And neither am I. Nyx shifted behind him, her 4 eyes glowing faintly, a reminder of the predator she was, the protector she had become. Jace extended a hand, brushing along her horned ridge as they moved together. The counselors watched in awe, whispering among themselves, realizing that every assumption about the human species had been shattered in minutes. Small in size, yes, but formidable beyond imagination when paired with courage, intellect, and the loyalty of a creature capable of annihilation. Tvor's voice broke the silence. The galaxy will remember this day, human. And I will not forget who stood beside you. Jace's gaze swept the hangar one last time. They'll remember, he agreed. But they won't understand. Not fully. That's the advantage. As the station settled into an uneasy calm, the distant glimmer of Reaver ships faded, but the knowledge of their inevitable return lingered like a shadow. Jace, Nyx, and Tvor stood together, united against what the galaxy thought impossible. The apex predator, the human, the skeptical Dravik. An alliance forged in fire, fear, and unwavering trust. And somewhere, deep in the void, new legends began to whisper through the corridors of the cosmos. Mock the human if you dare, but pray you never meet what loves him. The stars outside twinkled indifferently, but inside Helion's spire, a new order of respect had been carved. The galaxy had learned its first lesson. Humans might be small, but their courage, intellect, and capacity for bonds could make them the most feared and admired species in existence. Jace looked down at Nyx, hand resting against her warm, resilient scales. We survived, he said softly. And next time, we'll make them remember us before they even arrive. Nyx rumbled in agreement, a low, vibrating promise. Tvor, standing beside them, allowed himself a rare smile. Then let them come. Let the galaxy see what it means to underestimate humans, and their monsters. And with that, the station hummed with life, a bastion of strength and loyalty in the quiet of space, waiting for the next storm, ready to meet it head-on.